Finding and hunting for the region-roaming legendary Pokemon was one of the more exhilarating things you could do in the early-gen Pokemon games as a kid. They really captured a sense of mystery alongside a high challenge, with very few in-game clues given as to their information and whereabouts. They're a great setup with how these games work. You're minding your business, Pokemon as usual in the tall grass, and suddenly legendary music is playing and you're greeted by this ferocious, awesome-looking Pokemon you've never seen before. And then just as quickly as it appeared, it's gone, only leaving a Pokédex entry on where to find it next. So the hunt is on, and it's not going to be easy. It's you versus the beast. It's a very compelling premise that just begs strategizing and experimentation in order to capture the legendary for yourself. And whether you throw a Master Ball first turn, or build a setup to trap the roamer and then whittle it down, the reward seems like it should really be of epic proportions. It really should be, right up there with the legendary birds or the Reggies. But the Gen 3 roamers in particular are subject to a few oversights in the game's code that, while on paper are incredibly minor, ultimately result in them being weak, borderline unusable, not worth the trouble Pokemon. And it's really a shame, because these designs are so great and the questline is such a fun one. A new boss monster for your team is just the natural conclusion. So what's the problem with these Pokemon? We're specifically looking at Latios and Latias in Ruby and Sapphire, not Emerald, and then Raikou, Entei, and Suicune in FireRed and LeafGreen. Taking things from the top, once the roamers have been officially spawned in and tracked down, the next step is naturally going to be battling and catching them. This is business as usual with the Lati twins, but we run into our first big issue during the battle with Entei and Raikou specifically. Your save file's specific beast is determined by who your original starter was, with Bulbasaur and Squirtle resulting in Entei and Raikou respectively, and any given save file only being afforded one out of the three beasts. If either of these two Pokemon use the move Roar to end your battle, the Pokédex will no longer track their location and instead show Area Unknown under their information. And this is because that individual Pokemon has been removed from the game, and there's no way to get them back outside of resetting. FireRed and LeafGreen mistakenly treat a wild Pokemon using the move Roar the same way as if you had knocked it out normally, and like with most legendaries, because there's only one, this glitch to defeat removes that single chance you had access to, so that Pokemon is gone. I'm sure this was incredibly confusing and frustrating for young players. I know I was. I had no idea what I had done to lose track of Entei when I was playing as a kid. Fortunately for us now, there are a handful of ways that this problem can be dealt with. The abilities Suction Cups and Soundproof both negate the effects of Roar, and it can also be blocked with the moves Ingrain and Taunt. So in practice, a Pokemon built for taking on Raikou or Entei will just need a combination of a trapping move to keep them from fleeing, like Block or Mean Look, alongside one of those Roar cancelers. Crobat is a great option here, as it can learn both Mean Look and Taunt alongside a relatively high speed stat, so it can make the situation very manageable. Otherwise, just make sure you don't save if they use Roar, and if you don't want to deal with the setup, you can be like me and just use the Master Ball. The legendary beasts have had their movesets copied over from the ones that they had in Crystal for the most part, which is why Suicune is not subject to this glitch. It would have Roar at the level it appears in Gold and Silver, but its moveset was updated for its box art debut in Crystal, so it functions totally normally. At least it would, if it wasn't subject to the other glitch plaguing this group of Pokemon, which ruins their stat lines. This one affects all 5 of the possible roamers in Gen 3, but it was fortunately fixed in Emerald. If you ever tried using any of these 5 Pokemon, probably notice that their stats are just atrocious. Out of the box, they're really, really bad. And it isn't just bad luck, they are accidentally set up to always turn out like that. These Pokemon will always have a defense, special attack, and speed IV of 0, an attack IV no greater than 7, and then their HP stat generates normally. I mean, they're still legendaries, still powerful and all that, but this is a huge blow for their usage in comp or the battle facilities. So why is this happening? And why are they always caught with IVs in those specific ranges? Well, the Pokemon's stats are generated normally when the game originally creates them. For the legendary beasts, this is when you resolve the post-game storyline and talk to Celio, and when you watch the TV in Ruby and Sapphire at your house for the Lati twins. This initial process goes off without a hitch, but the games copy this data incorrectly when the Pokemon are being added to your party or box after successful capture. This issue only affects the roamers because the games use a unique method of storing their stats and saving them in between fights in order to ensure that once the roamer is generated, you are always fighting the same one, rather than having a newly generated one each encounter. Under the hood, a Pokemon's stats that you actually see in-game are determined by their individual values, or IVs for short. These are a set of 6 numbers each linked to a specific stat that range between 0 and 31 that slightly influence the stats that you actually see in-game. Greater IVs result in greater stats for that Pokemon. These Pokemon, like any other, have their IVs stored as a set of 30 bits that can either be 1s or 0s, and each individual stat has a section of 5 bits in this overall set. This is why a Pokemon's IVs run between 0 and 31. 5 bits gives 2 to the 5th possibilities of number sets for a total of 32 possible outcomes, 0 to 31. Each bit is giving an amount towards that possible 31 total. From right to left, these amounts are 1, 2, 4, 8, and 16. So a 1 will contribute the amount of the spot that it's in to the total, while a 0 contributes nothing. And when this occurs with our Pokemon in question, the roamer-specific copying process incorrectly only copies the 8 rightmost bits of the overall set of 30, leaving the other 22 as default zeros. And then taking into account the order in which each set of 5 is translated into the Pokemon's actual stats in the game, our 4 leftmost stats have been entirely zeroed out, attack maxes out at 7, and HP can range up to the normal 31, leaving us with a practically unusable, complete disappointment of a legendary. But at least now we know why. Really is quite a shame though, because all 5 of these Pokemon are great options for doing work at the battle frontier or just putting a team together in general. Very functional and cool Pokemon, on top of all the satisfaction of prevailing over a roaming legendary. Fortunately, we're still in luck on all accounts. To wrap up here, let's discuss other viable options for these 5 duds. Like I said earlier, this glitch was actually fixed in Emerald, so the Latios and Latios there are totally normal and can be soft reset for decent IVs. On top of this, for those with access to it, the Eon ticket Latitwin also generates normally, so we've got plenty of options on this front. For the legendary beasts, they all generate normally in Pokemon Colosseum in their shadow forms, and they can be soft reset and then can be transferred over to wherever you need them. Maybe a little bit out of the way, but if you're jonesing to use your beast of choice, Colosseum is definitely the way to go. Alright, and that's the story with the roaming legendaries in Gen 3. Honestly find it kind of incredible how the tiniest of oversights added up to potentially infuriating issues for players. Why is Entei gone from my save? I put so much time into this file. Is Raikou really gone for good? Why did I get such a terrible Latios? Almost all of its IVs are zeros. And this is all endgame stuff, so it's probably the most dedicated late game players that were mainly affected by these glitches too. It's really an absolute perfect storm of misfortune. So it's nice that there are at least some makeshift options to get the Pokemon in good shape in other games. That's all I got for you today, folks. Thanks for watching if you made it this far. Hope you enjoyed it, maybe learned something even. Let me know what you thought. Stay safe out there. Watch out for roaming legendaries in your local area, especially the bugged ones. I will see you all next time. Droomish out.